Welcome to the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum's monthly podcast. Each episode will bring you stories of our great Western heritage right to your computer or portable MP3 device. On today's show, the museum's Don Reeves talks to Western film actor and producer Tom Selleck. Mr. Selleck was interviewed on the eve of his induction into the Hall of Great Western Performers on April 17, 2010.
We've really been looking forward to your return, Mr. Selleck, to the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum for your induction into the Hall of Great Western Performers. It hasn't been that long since your last visit, but this is going to be a very special weekend.
Well, it's good to be back under the circumstances. I can't really believe it, but it's really nice to be here. And I get here fairly regularly, maybe not often enough, but it feels like an old home now.
Oh, wonderful. Sitting here in the Western Performers Gallery, are there any special mentors that you might have among these past inductees of the Western Performers Gallery?
Yeah, there are. Two. James Garner, not really for Westerns. I formed a lot of my appetites as an actor watching Jim, and then when I started doing Westerns, it was my friend Ben Johnson. And what a way to start a Western, with him next to you most of the time, and in the Sacketts, and Slim Pickens was in that movie. Jack Elam was in that movie. Buck Taylor was in that movie. It was, I could just watch people and learn, you know.
Your film, Quigley Down Under, has been a particular favorite among your Western fans. Do you have a particular feel for why that one maybe stands out to them, and why it's become such a almost a cult Western film?
The first thing that always gets to me when I'm considering doing a part is what happens when you read the script. And I found a real emotional connection with the character. I think Simon Windsor, who also directed Lonesome Dove and Monty Walsh for me and Louis L'Amour's Crossfire Trail, I think Simon really got that picture. He's Australian, but he also understands horses. And I think the idea of a fish out of water, particularly a cowboy, going somewhere else, has a great allure. And as I know cowboys do in general, I think when you put him in that environment, in this vast landscape of the Australian outback, and it has so many elements. He's kind of an avenging angel for the Aboriginal people, and he becomes almost bigger than life. I found it a little intimidating starting Quigley, because I said, I think I would have cast John Wayne in this, and he would have done better. But I had to get over that. I think it's that. Simon and I worked very hard to make this Sharps rifle a character in the script that basically, if you watch the movie, and I know you have, you don't see it. It's sheathed. And it doesn't kind of come out for a while, and you wonder what's in there. And the Australians didn't have anything like it, and it was mind-boggling to them, a rifle that could hit people at that range. Simon and I talked, and we said what must really frighten these Australian ranchers would be the fact that with the distance Quigley was shooting at, you wouldn't hear the rifle. You'd have the impact, and then maybe as you were falling off your horse, you'd hear the report of the rifle. And they did, I think it got a nomination for sound, and that was a very interesting element. It just is a really well done movie. It was released during the same month I had another movie out. It made quite a bit of money, but they pulled it right away. It was also released the same month as Dances with Wolves. So I was competing with myself. What happened were not only did we get great reviews, and not only did it make money in theaters, but once it got in the other markets, it's just been around forever, and I'm really proud of that, because something's got to be good to last, and I think Quigley's a good movie.
The Sharps rifle that Matthew Quigley, the character, uses in that film, has it started to become tied to your Western character in much of the same way as the Loop Winchester did with John Wayne?
You know, I think it is. I get a lot of response still from Quigley. Most people have seen it more than once. The Sharps rifle was literally the instrument of this avenging angel, and it was legendary in America. But those, you know, we tried to set about the process. A lot of people know about Sharps rifles. There's a lot that don't, and we wanted to educate them. And so, yeah, it's tied to me. I'm proud of that. I know Shiloh Sharps in Montana is back ordered on what they make now is a Quigley rifle. The only Quigley rifle they won't make is one with the initials MQ. You can have any other initials you want. So yeah, what a nice thing to get tied to you, and it is in many ways, as that movie is, and as lines are from the movie, you know. Said I never had much use for one, never said I didn't know how to use it. I mean, I can't tell you at the hardware store how many people have come up and poked me in the back and said that.
Well, you've donated personally over 30 pieces, items from your
Is
careers.
that many?
That many.
I want them back.
Don't take any of them
No,
back. To the museum now, and several are in the cases behind you. Are there any favorite stories of any of those objects similar to the Quigley rifle? Of those,
all of them have their own story for me. I grew up in an era where I'd see movies, and Hollywood didn't think much of putting a movie that took place in the 1860s, and they'd have an 1873 single action Colt, or they'd have a 1892 Winchester, and I've always found the accuracy of that stuff really important. And the way I learned my craft as an actor, props and wardrobe are extremely important. If you're cast right, and then your wardrobe furthers who the character is, and your props do, you're about 90% there. Then you only screw it up by acting, you know. So basically, I know I saw back there the Monty Walsh Spurs. I did a lot of research with Gary Dunshee at Big Ben Saddlery, and he said, you know, Monty, he knew the book real well, Jack Schaefer's book, and he said, you know, Monty is a Bronx stomper, and in the 1890s there was a spur that came out. It was a locking rowel. The rowel only spun a little bit and then locked, and it was great for horse breakers. It didn't really catch on, and it kind of went away, but it was in some of the old catalogs, and we had that built. Most of the stuff I've done for my Westerns I've had built. I'm tall. Most period spurs that are actual period spurs, the rowel curves down. You know, if my rowel curves down, I'm not going to find the horse. I got long legs. So there weren't that many people that tall. So basically the props fit the character. The Quigley saddles back there, that was Jerry Croft in Deadwood, South Dakota made that saddle, and all my period saddles after that. If you found a period saddle that was right for the period, and if it was an antique, two things would happen. One, it wouldn't fit you, and two, it wouldn't fit the horse, because horses are different now. So that was a little tricky, the Quigley saddle, because it's a double cinch rig, not just a loose flank cinch, but 2 cinches. So your horse is going to have to get used to that, but it's a really neat rig. I've kind of been a stickler for breast collars, because I don't think you really saw them. There were a couple breast collars running around in the 1800s, but not too many. There was a cavalry one. So I've tried to be accurate about that. What else you got back there? I mean, you got my 76 Winchester, which I'm very fond of, and I'd never seen that in a movie. The 76 Winchester carbine has a long, almost musket-like stock. And I said, I haven't really seen that. That's what the Mounties use, the Northwest Canadian Mounted Police. That was their rifle. So I said, I'd like to use one of those in a movie. That particular one becomes a character. The story really that I liked so much about that is my character buys it off the wall. There's a guy in the street calling him out. And I'm wearing a handgun, my character, but why go to a gunfight with a handgun when you can have a rifle? So he goes over and buys this rifle, which was ordered by his dead friend, and he never got to have it. His friend died. And takes it off the wall without a waiting period or a cooling off period, which I hope was not lost on the public, and takes it in the street and wins the gunfight. And so it's a very specific prop, and it means a lot to him. The Kenny Howell R&D Guns did that 1860 Army, which again was integral in the plot, because his wife's father, he was lost in the Civil War, presumed dead, my character Cable. His wife's father was a gunsmith, and she became a gunsmith. And he's given this gun when he comes back. It was his wife's way of keeping him alive. He thinks her father made it, and she gets a little mad because she made that gun for him. And working on that pistol was kind of the way I think her character, played by Susie Amos, said, maybe if I make this, he'll come home, because he was just lost. So they're all very specific. You got some Quigley spurs with a big Q on them, which have jingle bobs, which drove the sound man crazy on Quigley. When I didn't have as much say early on in Westerns, nobody let me wear a hat like that. They said, well, Gabby Hayes wears a hat up front. I said, well, so did a lot of people. Look at your Remington and Russell Bronzes. But I couldn't, nobody let me do it. So I had a lot of control when I did Monty Walsh, and I said, I'm wearing that hat.
That was a great, strong character.
Thank you.
Monty Walsh.
Thank you.
Monty Walsh. And would your fans ever accept you as an outright villain, you think?
I'd like to play villains. It's fun. They're interesting parts. I think some people make a mistake, actors, when they play villains, that they don't really give them 3 dimensions. I mean, Hitler didn't think he was bad. It's the old Hitler syndrome. If you play a heavy, God forbid, you kind of try and give Hitler human qualities, because people might think you actually liked him. You can still hate him, but once you step in his shoes, he didn't think he was evil. And that's what I think really makes a character really evil, is when he's got his own justifications and stuff, and charm. And I keep looking for good parts. I've played some people that were, in fact, I love playing people who are less than perfect. Certainly Monty Walsh was less than perfect. But he was just a cowboy, and he wasn't going to stop being a cowboy. I described him as, I think he saw it as his job to stand athwart history yelling, stop. And actually, I stole some of that line from William F. Buckley, who was a friend of mine. But that was Monty, and the world was changing to Monty Wooden. And because he was so dedicated and in love with the life, as I wished I could be. Maybe I was born in the wrong era. I love that character, but he's flawed. I always look for flaws in characters, and consequently, yeah, I'd love to play heavy. And I think audiences will accept me in that.
I hope so. Is there any truth to the rumors that one of your next roles in a Western film might be the role of a gunfighter?
What film is it? I hope I like it. I'd like to play another gunfighter. What?
It's a TNT project. Is that it was somebody caught a whiff of something that's probably not accurate?
I do. I have fond hopes. I had a project that we were going to do at TNT, Louis L'Amour's Empty Land, And I know the family, and I still think Baltimore and Kathy had, it's very hard to get the rights to Louis' books, but the Empty Land, he is a gunfighter, usually on the law and order side of things, but it's a very good story. I hope to still get it made. Probably somewhere else. TNT isn't making, unfortunately, because as they used to build themselves, they were the best little movie studio around. I was fortunate to make 3 Westerns there, and I'm really proud of all of them. So if that's the one you're talking about, I'm ready.
Super. Many of the great Western movie stars in this room had favorite horses, or horses with names. How's Spiky?
Spiky is great. Spike is still in my barn. Spike is my horse from Quigley. Also, he earned me some money. Well, it cost me about $7,000 to fly him home from Australia with all those fancy race horses, and like they do, I guess. So he earned me some money on Last Stand at Sabre River. So Spikey's been in 2 movies. He's a big-time movie star. I get on him every so often. He gets a little footsore pretty easy, but Spike's in his mid-20s and doing great. And he had that kind of lean front that the old quarter horses did. The old-timey ones they really did in those days, and I always liked that. He had to have a lot of thoroughbred in him because he's about 16'1", which is good for me on camera. I had a couple of Wranglers when I was first learning to ride, or not learning to ride, but learning to ride well. Jay Fishburne and Donna Hall, and they said, don't ever let him on camera put you on a horse that's less than 16 hands. It isn't going to look right for a hero. I can ride a horse less than 16 hands and function and everything else, but if you really want those kind of shots where it fits, and that was my big quest on Quigley, was finding a horse, a quarter horse which they're over there, but not as many. And he's a registered quarter horse, but he's got to have some thoroughbred in him. And I always felt, boy, that looks right. It doesn't look like a modern quarter horse. It looks like those old ponies that I think they rode and you saw, and you see them in the Russell Bronzes and the Remington Bronzes. They were just narrower up front.
Mr. Selleck, thank you for being with us tonight and answering some fun questions.
You bet.
About some of your favorite movie memorabilia, your favorite movie parts. But I know you've got plenty of fans waiting out in the marble hallway there for your reception, for your induction into the Hall of Great Western Performers.
We hope you've enjoyed this month's podcast, coming to you from the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City. Join us next month as we continue to explore our great Western heritage. Visit our website at nationalcowboymuseum.org. You can also freely subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. Thanks for taking a look. We'll see you next month.